Let me tell you about two families I have known for decades. Both families started out in similar circumstances, similar ages, similar education levels, similar careers. One family had two incomes. Both spouses worked demanding jobs, together earning about $180,000 per year. The other family had one income. One spouse worked while the other stayed home. Their household income was about $90,000 per year. Now here's the part that will surprise you. After 30 years, the single income family had a net worth of over $2 million. The dual income couple, earning twice as much, had a net worth of about $400,000. The family earning half as much ended up 5 times wealthier. When I first noticed this pattern, I thought it must be an anomaly. Surely earning more money leads to having more money. That is basic arithmetic. But the more families I observed over the years, the more I realized this was not an anomaly at all. It was a pattern, a consistent, repeatable pattern that defied conventional wisdom about income and wealth. This is not an anomaly. I have seen this pattern repeat itself over and over throughout my career. Two-income households, despite their higher earnings, often end up in worse financial shape than single-income households earning far less. It seems impossible. It defies basic arithmetic. But the reasons, once you understand them, are actually quite logical. I have thought deeply about this paradox because it reveals something fundamental about how wealth is actually built. We live in a society that worships income. We ask each other what we make. We judge success by salary. We assume that higher earnings automatically translate to greater prosperity. But this assumption, which seems so obviously true, is actually dangerously wrong. Today, I want to explain why this happens. I want to show you the hidden costs and psychological traps that turn higher income into lower wealth. And I want to give you a framework for thinking about household income that might change how you approach your own family's financial decisions. Let me start with a story from my own observation that crystallized this insight for me. Back in 1982, I was having dinner with two couples who were old friends, the Hendersons and the Millers. They'd grown up together, gone to the same schools, had similar backgrounds. The Hendersons were a dual income couple. Both were professionals. He was an accountant. She was a marketing manager, combined income of about $70,000, which was very good money in 1982. The Millers were a single income family. He worked as an engineer. She stayed home with their 3 children. His income was about $40,000. Over dinner, the conversation turned to money, as it often does among old friends. The Hendersons were stressed. Despite their high income, they felt like they were barely getting by. They had 2 car payments, a large mortgage, daycare costs, professional wardrobes to maintain, and no time to cook. So they ate out constantly at the end of every month. There was nothing left. The Millers seemed relaxed. They drove older cars, lived in a modest home, and rarely ate out, but they were saving over $1,000 per month. They took family vacations every year. They had no debt except their mortgage, which was small. They felt financially secure despite earning almost half as much. I remember thinking that night that something fundamental was wrong with how we think about household income. We assume more is always better, but the Hendersons, with their 2 incomes, were actually in worse financial shape than the Millers with one. The second income was not making them richer, it was making them broker. Let me walk you through the specific reasons why this happens, because understanding these dynamics can save you enormous amounts of money and stress over your lifetime. The first reason is what I call the tax trap. When you add a second income to a household, that income is taxed at your marginal rate, not your average rate. This is crucial to understand. Let me give you a concrete example. Say the first spouse earns $100,000 after the standard deduction. And at current tax rates, their effective federal tax rate might be around 15%. They pay roughly $15,000 in federal taxes and keep $85,000. Now the second spouse goes to work and also earns $100,000. You might think they would also pay 15% or $15,000 in taxes, but that is not how progressive taxation works. That second income starts where the first income left off. It is taxed at the marginal rate, which might be 24% or higher, plus state taxes if you live in a state with income tax, plus the potential loss of various tax credits and deductions that phase out at higher incomes. When you do the real math, that second $100,000 income might only add $65,000 or $70,000 to your after-tax household income. You are working full-time for an effective rate of 65 to 70 cents on the dollar. Already the math is less attractive than it appeared, but it gets worse, much worse. The second reason is the cost of working. When both spouses work, the household incurs costs that simply do not exist in a single income household. These costs are often invisible because people do not think of them as costs of working. They think of them as just normal expenses. But they are directly caused by having two working spouses. Start with child care. In most American cities, quality child care costs $15,000 to $25,000 per year per child. If you have two children in daycare, you might be spending $40,000 per year just so both parents can work. That $40,000 comes directly out of the second income. Then there is transportation. A single income household can often get by with one car. A dual income household almost always needs two. That is an extra car payment, extra insurance, extra maintenance, extra gas, call it $8,000 to $12,000 per year in additional transportation costs. Then there is professional clothing. The stay-at-home spouse can wear whatever they want. The working spouse needs professional attire, suits, dresses, dry cleaning, another $3,000 to $5,000 per year. Then there is food. When both spouses work demanding jobs, nobody has time or energy to cook. The family eats out more, orders delivery more, buys prepared foods at the grocery store. The difference between a household that cooks from scratch and one that relies on convenience food and restaurants can easily be $10,000 to $15,000 per year. Then there is the miscellaneous category that nobody tracks, the house cleaner, because nobody has time to clean, the lawn service, because nobody has time for yard work, the premium for the more expensive but more convenient everything, because time is scarce when both spouses work. Eat it all up, and the cost of the second income can easily reach $60,000 to $80,000 per year. Remember, that second income was only adding $65,000 to $70,000 after taxes. In many cases, the second income barely covers the costs it creates. Sometimes it does not even cover those costs. The family is literally paying to have both spouses work. The third reason is lifestyle inflation. This is the most insidious factor because it happens gradually, almost invisibly. When household income increases, spending increases to match. Not because of conscious decisions, but because of subtle shifts in expectations and habits. I call this the two-income trap, and it works like this. When a family has two incomes, they feel rich, they feel like they can afford more, so they make commitments based on that feeling. They buy a bigger house because they can afford the payments with two incomes. They buy nicer cars because they can afford the payments with two incomes. They send their kids to private school because they can afford the tuition with two incomes. But here's the trap. Once those commitments are made, they become non-negotiable. The family cannot easily downsize the house or switch to public school or sell the car. They are locked in, and they are locked in at a spending level that requires both incomes to maintain. They have lost all flexibility. They have converted an option, the option for one spouse to work or not, into a requirement. The single income family, by contrast, sized their life to fit one income from the start. They never made commitments that required two incomes. They never lost the option. If circumstances change, if one spouse wants to work or has to work, that income is pure surplus. It can all be saved. But they are never in a position where both incomes are required just to maintain their lifestyle. The dual income couple thinks, we earn good money, we deserve a nice house, so they buy more house than they need. The single income couple thinks, we need to be careful. Let us buy what we can comfortably afford. They buy less house. The dual income couple thinks, we work hard, we deserve nice cars. So they buy new cars and trade them in every few years. The single income couple thinks cars are just transportation. They buy reliable used cars and drive them for a decade. The dual income couple thinks we have no time. Let us just pay someone to do it. So they outsource everything. The single income couple thinks we have more time than money. Let us do it ourselves. So they learn to fix things, to cook, to maintain their home. I remember one dual income couple who told me they absolutely needed their combined income of $220,000 per year. When I asked them to walk me through their expenses, it turned out they were spending about $195,000. They had a $400,000 mortgage, 2 car leases totaling $14,000 per year, $28,000 in private school tuition, $15,000 in vacations, and the list went on. I asked them a simple question. If you had started with one income, would you have made any of these commitments? They thought about it and admitted that no, they would not have bought that much house. They would not have leased those cars. They probably would have used public school. They would have lived a completely different life, a life that would have required about $80,000 per year to maintain instead of $195,000. That is the lifestyle inflation trap. The dual income enabled a lifestyle that now requires the dual income to sustain. The second income, rather than creating wealth, is consumed entirely by the lifestyle it enabled. No surplus remains. Over time, these small differences compound into enormous gaps. The dual income couple's lifestyle expands to consume their entire income. The single income couple's lifestyle stays modest because it has to. And modest lifestyle plus consistent saving plus time equals wealth. There is also a psychological dimension to lifestyle inflation that is important to understand. When you earn a high income, you tend to compare yourself to others who earn high incomes. You live in neighborhoods with high earners. Your children go to school with children of high earners. Your social circle consists of high earners. And you feel pressure, consciously or not, to keep up. The single income family does not face this pressure in the same way. Their income puts them in a different reference group. They compare themselves to people with similar incomes, which means more modest lifestyles. They do not feel deprived because everyone around them lives similarly. This is why you see the paradox of high earners who feel poor. They are comparing themselves to an ever-escalating standard. Meanwhile, modest earners who live within their means feel comfortable because their reference point is achievable. The fourth reason dual incomes often lead to less wealth is what I call the fragility factor. A dual income household is more fragile than a single income household, even though it might seem like the opposite would be true. Think about it this way. In a dual income household, the lifestyle is built around both incomes. The mortgage assumes both incomes. The car payments assume both incomes. The daycare assumes both spouses working. If either spouse loses their job, gets sick, or needs to take time off, the entire financial structure is threatened. In a single income household, the lifestyle is built around one income. If that income is lost, it is a crisis. Yes. But the household has a backup. The stay-at-home spouse can enter the workforce. They have skills. They have a degree. They have been out of the workforce by choice, not inability. That backup earner represents insurance that the dual income family does not have. Moreover, the single income household has built habits of frugality that serve them well in a crisis. They know how to live on less because they have been doing it all along. The dual income household has no such practice. When income drops, they do not know how to adjust because they have never had to. I have seen this play out many times during recessions. Dual income households that look financially secure on paper fell apart when one spouse was laid off. They could not make their mortgage payments. They could not maintain their lifestyle. They had no cushion because they had been spending everything they earned. Meanwhile, single income households weathered the same storms relatively easily. Their expenses were already low. They had savings because they had been living below their means. The spouse who had been at home could pick up part-time work if needed. They were resilient in ways the high-earning dual-income family was not. The fifth reason is opportunity cost. When both spouses work demanding jobs, the family loses something that cannot easily be measured in dollars. They lose time, they lose flexibility. They lose the ability to optimize household operations in ways that save money and build wealth. The stay-at-home spouse has time to comparison shop, to wait for sales, to buy in bulk, to cook from scratch. These activities save significant money but require time that working couples do not have. Working couples pay premium prices for convenience because they have no choice. Let me give you specific examples of how this plays out. A stay-at-home spouse has time to plan meals, shop strategically, and cook from scratch. A family of 4 can eat extremely well on $400 per month if someone has time to do it right. The dual-income family, ordering delivery and buying prepared foods, might spend $1,200 per month on food of lower quality. That is nearly $10,000 per year saved through time investment in meal planning and cooking. A stay-at-home spouse has time to research major purchases. When the family needs a new appliance, they can spend days reading reviews, comparing prices, waiting for sales, and negotiating with sellers. They might save $300 on a refrigerator, $200 on a washing machine, $500 on a mattress. These savings add up over a lifetime. A stay-at-home spouse has time to handle maintenance and minor repairs. They can learn to fix a leaky faucet, patch drywall, change brake pads. Each skill learned is money saved repeatedly over decades. The dual-income family pays full price for every service call. The stay-at-home spouse has time to manage the household's finances carefully, to review bills for errors, to negotiate better rates on insurance, to research major purchases, to handle bureaucratic tasks that would otherwise require taking time off work. This careful management compounds into real savings. I knew a stay-at-home spouse who spent about 10 hours per month optimizing her family's finances. She reviewed every credit card statement for errors. She called insurance companies annually to renegotiate rates. She tracked prices and bought household staples when they went on sale. She estimated that this effort saved her family about $8,000 per year. That is $800 per HR of optimization work. No job she could have gotten would have paid her $800 per HR after taxes. The stay-at-home spouse has time to handle emergencies without disrupting income. When a child is sick, they can stay home. When a repair person needs access to the house, they can be there. When an elderly parent needs help, they can provide it in a dual-income household. These situations create crises that cost money in the form of lost wages, emergency child care, or outsourced help. There is also the matter of workplace costs that are invisible to most people. The working spouse spends money at work, coffee with colleagues, lunch out because there is no time to pack food, contributing to office gifts and parties, grabbing drinks after work. These expenses might seem small individually, but they add up to hundreds or thousands of dollars per year. The stay-at-home spouse also has time to invest in skills that save money, learning to cook well, learning basic home repair, learning to garden. These skills take time to develop but pay dividends for decades. The dual-income couple, exhausted from work, has no bandwidth for skill development. One stay-at-home spouse I knew learned to sew. She made curtains, hemmed pants, repaired clothes, and eventually made simple garments. Over 30 years, she estimated she saved over $50,000 on household textiles and clothing repairs alone. Plus, she enjoyed it. It was not work to her. It was a hobby that happened to save money. Another learned basic auto maintenance, oil changes, brake pads, air filters, battery replacement over the course of owning cars for 40 years. He saved tens of thousands of dollars that would have gone to mechanics, and he knew his cars better, which meant he could identify problems early before they became expensive. These opportunities are simply not available to families where both spouses work demanding jobs. They come home exhausted. They have no time or energy for skill development. They pay full price for everything because they have no choice. The premium they pay for convenience is the opportunity cost of their second income. Let me now share the math that finally convinced me this pattern was real and not just anecdote. I did this analysis in the 1990s with actual families I knew, and I have updated it periodically since then. The numbers change, but the conclusion remains the same. Take a dual income family earning $200,000 combined. After federal and state taxes, they keep about $140,000 after child care for 2 children. $40,000 they keep $100,000 after the extra car. $8,000 they keep $92,000 after professional clothing and dry cleaning. $4,000 they keep $88,000 after the premium for convenience, food, and restaurants compared to home cooking. $12,000 they keep $76,000. After house cleaning and lawn service and other outsourced tasks, $6,000 they keep $70,000. That $200,000 income has become $70,000 in spendable money after the cost of earning it. And we have not even discussed the larger house and nicer cars they probably bought because of their high income. Now take a single income family earning $100,000 after federal and state taxes. They keep about $82,000. One parent stays home, so no child care costs. One car is sufficient, saving $8,000, no professional wardrobe needed for the stay-at-home spouse. Home-cooked meals save $12,000 compared to the dual-income family's convenience food budget. The stay-at-home spouse handles cleaning and yard work. That single-income family has $82,000 in spendable money, more than the dual-income family earning twice as much. But here's where it gets really interesting. The single-income family's expenses are probably lower too because they have not inflated their lifestyle to match a high income. They have a smaller mortgage because they bought a smaller house. They have no car payment because they paid cash for a used car. Their total expenses might be $55,000 per year, leaving them $27,000 to save and invest. The dual income family, with their larger house and nicer cars and higher lifestyle expectations, might have expenses of $68,000 per year. That leaves them only $2,000 to save and invest, or more likely, they are actually spending more than $70,000 and going into debt. Over 30 years, the single income family investing $27,000 per year at 8% annual returns accumulates about $3.3 million. The dual income family investing $2,000 per year accumulates about $245,000. The family earning half as much ends up 13 times wealthier. These numbers are illustrative, not precise. Every family situation is different, but the direction is clear and consistent. Higher income does not automatically mean greater wealth. The relationship between income and wealth is mediated by expenses. And expenses are largely determined by lifestyle choices that are themselves influenced by income. Now, let me be clear about something important. I am not saying that dual income households are always a mistake or that single income households are always the right choice. There are many valid reasons for both spouses to work: career fulfillment, professional development, the social connections that come from work, the risk diversification of having 2 income sources, the examples and role modeling provided to children by seeing both parents work. What I am saying is that the financial case for dual income is much weaker than most people assume. When you factor in taxes, the costs of working, lifestyle inflation, fragility, and opportunity costs, that second income often provides far less benefit than it appears. Sometimes it provides no benefit at all. Sometimes it actually makes you poorer. The decision about whether both spouses should work should be made with clear eyes about the true financial impact. Too many families assume that more income automatically means more wealth and make decisions accordingly. They are often wrong. Let me share some principles that can help families make better decisions about this important choice. First, do the real math. Before committing to a dual income lifestyle, calculate the actual financial benefit of the second income after taxes and all associated costs. You might be surprised how small that benefit actually is. In some cases, it might be negative. I encourage families to create what I call a true income statement for the second job. Start with gross income, subtract federal, state, and local taxes at your marginal rate. Subtract child care costs. Subtract the additional transportation costs. Subtract professional clothing and grooming. Subtract the premium for convenience food versus home cooked. Subtract all the other costs that would disappear if that spouse were not working. What remains is the true financial contribution of that job. Often it is shockingly small, sometimes it is negative second. Do not let income determine lifestyle. If you choose to have two incomes, you do not have to spend like a dual income household. You could live on one income and save the entire second income. This gives you the wealth building benefits of the single income household while also providing the career and diversification benefits of dual income. I know couples who have done this successfully. They made a commitment when they got married to live on one income regardless of whether both worked. When the second spouse went back to work, they treated that income as invisible. It went straight to savings and investments. They never upgraded their lifestyle within 15 years. They had accumulated over $1 million in that invisible income account. They had the best of both worlds. Third, consider the full value of the stay-at-home option. A spouse who stays home provides enormous value that does not show up in income statistics. Childcare, household management, financial optimization, skill development, flexibility. If you had to pay for all of that, the cost would be substantial. I encourage people to actually calculate this value. What would you pay for a full-time nanny? What would you pay for a housekeeper, a cook, a personal assistant, a financial manager, a handyman? The stay-at-home spouse provides all of these services and more. When you add it up, the economic value of the stay-at-home spouse often exceeds $50,000 or $60,000 per year. That is effectively tax-free because you would have to earn far more than that to buy those services after paying taxes. Fourth, think about fragility. How would your household handle a job loss, a health crisis, an economic downturn? Is your lifestyle sustainable on one income if necessary? If not, you may be more vulnerable than you realize. I have seen too many families destroyed financially because they built their lives around two incomes and then lost one. They had no margin, no cushion, no flexibility. When the income dropped, everything collapsed. The family that had built around one income from the start would have weathered the same storm easily. Fifth, consider what you actually want. Money is a means to an end, not an end in itself. What kind of life do you want to live? How do you want to spend your time? What matters most to your family? The answers to these questions should drive your income decisions, not the other way around. Some people genuinely love their careers. Work gives them meaning, purpose, social connection, intellectual stimulation. For these people, working is not primarily about money. It is about fulfillment. That is a perfectly valid reason to work. And the financial analysis I have presented should not override it. But other people work primarily for money. They would rather be doing something else but feel they need the income. For these people, the analysis matters enormously. If the second income is barely covering the costs it creates, then working for money does not make sense. Better to reclaim the time and spend it on things that actually matter. 6, remember that this is not permanent. Circumstances change, children grow up and childcare costs disappear, career opportunities come and go, health situations evolve. The right answer today may not be the right answer in 5 years. Stay flexible, reassess regularly. Do not lock yourself into arrangements that no longer serve you. I have watched many families over many decades. The happiest and wealthiest are not always the highest earning. Often they are families who made thoughtful decisions about work and money, who understood the trade-offs, who chose quality of life over maximizing income. The Millers, who I mentioned at the beginning, retired comfortably in their early 60s. They traveled. They spent time with grandchildren. They had no financial worries. The Hendersons, despite earning nearly twice as much over their careers, are still working in their 70s. They have debt, they have stress, they wonder where all the money went. Two incomes do not automatically make you richer. In many cases, they make you broker. Not because of the income itself, but because of the lifestyle, the costs, the choices, and the traps that come along with it. The path to wealth is not through maximizing income. It is through maximizing the gap between income and expenses. And that gap is often larger in a single income household that lives modestly than in a dual income household that lives large. Let me tell you about one more family because their story perfectly illustrates the escape from this trap. The Parkers were a dual income family living the typical dual income life. Both worked demanding jobs. They had a big mortgage, 2 car payments, daycare costs, eating them alive, had nothing in savings despite earning $160,000 combined. Then something happened that changed everything. The wife got laid off. At first they panicked. How would they survive on one income? They ran the numbers expecting disaster. But the numbers told a different story. Without the wife working, they no longer needed childcare. Savings of $20,000 per year. They sold 1 car and eliminated a payment. Savings of $8,000 per year. The wife had time to cook, to shop carefully, to manage the household efficiently. Savings of $12,000 per year. Their taxes dropped because they were in a lower bracket. Savings of $9,000 per year. When they added it all up, losing the second income cost them maybe $15,000 per year in actual spending power. Not the $50,000 they expected. The second income had been providing far less real value than they realized. They made a radical decision. The wife would not go back to work. Instead, she would focus on managing the household and raising their children. They would live on one income permanently. That was 15 years ago. Today, the Parkers are debt-free, including their mortgage. They have over $700,000 in retirement savings. They are on track to retire comfortably in their early 60s. The job loss that seemed like a disaster turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to their finances. This story is more common than you might think. I have seen it repeated many times. A family loses one income, is forced to adapt, and discovers they are actually better off. The second income was a mirage all along. This is one of the most counterintuitive lessons in personal finance. And it is one of the most important to understand it. And you will make better decisions about work, money, and life. Ignore it, and you may spend decades running on a treadmill, working harder and harder just to stay in place. Watching families who earn half as much build the wealth that somehow eludes you. The arithmetic of wealth is simple. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference. Give it time. That arithmetic does not care whether you have one income or two. It only cares about the gap. And the gap is often larger with one income than with two. Think carefully about what kind of household you want to build. The obvious choice is not always the wise choice, and the path to financial security might be simpler than you think. Run the numbers for your own family. You might be shocked at what you discover. That second income you thought was building your future might actually be stealing it.